Thank you.
I'm going to invite Mike back up if he has any next steps on this, and I think he wants to give the council an update on process for the Spring Street project.
Yeah, well, the Reader's Digest version here is that September 12th, this has to be all completed for them to get the tax credit. So the TIF has to be voted on by then, and the credit enhancement, the home funds. And we need to do 10-day public hearing. So right now, obviously, we're missing a council meeting because of the holiday in September. So we're looking at a September 12th council meeting, which would have both a public hearing and then a vote that night. And anything past that would be past their points. The other thing you're looking at now, is the Spring Street project, which we had put $100,000 aside for that, which still would need to be voted on, but it's set aside. And the TIF was approved on that, but there were substantial changes made to the original plan that was voted on by this council. So probably with that being said, you'd want to look at those changes, which may and re-vote on that TIF. I did list out some of the changes. I believe Doug or Eric, which one would you like to speak on the changes to that?
I think they were in the info sheet. I can summarize them.
So Eric will summarize the changes because it's gone to the planning board. So you've got two issues with that. One is, for the state, if the state's fine with the process it went through with the tax increment financing, and two, when you voted on that, you voted on a specific project, and they did have significant changes on that. And also, that being said, if they're looking now for a $250,000 commitment to go on to that, well, frankly, you've got two projects in front of you for $250,000 each, and right now, if you're looking at $250 for the project just presented, and we have $100 for put aside on the other project, next year that monies may be available if we sell two of the income properties we have now that are rehab properties. If they both sell, and one of them has an offer in right now, the other one's going through rehab, and then we get the funding in place. But currently, to obligate two of them at $250,000 each, you'd be extremely tight.
And I asked staff to give a brief highlight of where that project was, not necessarily for us to get into a workshop that wasn't on the agenda. But enough has changed with that project. If the council does need to vote on the TIF again, as well as reconcile the home funds, there needs to be at least, if there's a set of questions the council may have, staff I think could quickly turn out a memo to you and make that public. But I would want your consensus that, you'll have the ability to make that decision, but I want to make sure staff know that they can green light scheduling and posting the public hearing for September 12th on that project as well. I didn't want people to be caught by surprise that we would be scheduling that. I wanted to, since we have new information tonight, put that on the table for you guys.
Yeah, to make it clear, the request for those funds, which we were told that they wouldn't be above the original amount, so the request for those funds came to my office today. So that's why we brought it forward, because everything we're dealing with right now is pretty time sensitive.
The planning board did review some physical changes to that development, and that really included, the goal of those changes was to reduce the per unit cost, from what I understand. They had parking underneath the the proposed building rather, in the original design. They've eliminated that and moved the parking to the sides of the building, made more green space at the rear instead of asphalt or paving in the back. And there was a patio paver area on the back side of the engine house on, I guess, the northern side of the site. They had to change that to landscaping and parking to reduce some of the costs. And the building itself is still a very nice urban design with a couple of commercial spaces and one additional unit. It was originally approved for 40. They wanted 41 just to try to spread those unit costs over one additional unit just to get them down below another threshold.
And they've also changed the units from a predominantly one-bedroom structure with a mix of market and affordable to predominantly family units, 2 to 3 bedrooms.
Yes, there were some additional larger units, but we could get the tally on those. I don't know.
Just, when the project was originally pitched, it was predominantly one bedroom, mix of income, storefronts, and sufficient parking with site design as well as the plaza, because the council was working with staff, with potential developers for the engine house, which I know is still an interest, and that the engine house is challenged by the lack of available parking. So as the council talked about the TIF, having the public plaza, having the commercial storefronts, and having parking that could be leased by the engine house were all part of I think an enticement to offer a 75% TIF on that project, which is different than 50% we just discussed for the other. So the project has changed substantially. The building footprint may not have, but the other elements that I think were part of the negotiation originally. So I think it warrants the council being able to give staff some feedback on that and scheduling some public process, knowing that time is tight because it's just coming back to us now.
Is there any reason why the 250 is a magic number? Is that for scoring purposes? So 150 doesn't get you any points? Okay. All right, thank you.
Would it be possible for staff, well, as soon as you're able to have it, I think we've got some of that here with what Manx has brought forward, to get the project budgets and scoring matrix, because no one's going to put in an application without actually knowing where they think they'll score. I think it'd be helpful for the council to see that. I think that's been part of the challenge before, is Auburn's a community that could score high, but there are certain things that don't play out in projects that eliminate points that we've never been fully a party to.
I think actually in executive session, they brought those numbers forward and then took them back in because it's a competitive nature. Yep. Anybody go on the Maine State Housing website and look at the point structure, go right online and look at that. So that was presented to us at one point in time, and because of the competitive nature and why we did an executive session, they took those numbers back in. But obviously they're going to be made public soon as they're turned over for application, which should be now, pretty much.
Other questions from the council? Go ahead.
I would like to just see on the Spring Street, I know they told us at the planning board about what they were doing, but I'd like to see if that has hurt the engine house in any way with the new plan, that they're going to have some green, some pavers, no pavers. Curb is different. I saw it looked like the little curb was different, and pushing parking out in a corner somewhere. If it's going to hurt the engine house, I'm not in favor of it, because they're in tight quarters there, and if we're going to squeeze them even more, nothing is ever going to go into that building, and the owners are just going to starve to death. So we need to keep forward what we had in the first plan that would help people go into the engine house.
Well, I think that was probably the reasoning behind bringing the TIF back, because there was enough changes that the people that did vote it probably did so because of the original building specs. That would enhance the other areas of the city, because that is a large TIF. It's beyond your own TIF policy of what you give out for TIFs.
Did the developer, it's Auburn Housing, they obviously created the development corporation to do this. Did they come to the city at any point as they were changing layout or design, knowing how much city input had gone into the original design as part of that negotiation? I mean, the home fund and the TIF, in some ways, that's our only negotiating chip to try to augment. The developer wants the project. We want to ask for more attractive architecture, public parking, public spaces. But before today, had the developer come to the city talking about give and take on those aspects?
Well, I think Yvette wanted to deal with them, and Rick, I think, was on vacation to see exactly what they were looking for, because the time was getting tight. And, I don't want to say they're negative, because we have a very good working relationship with that group of people. So basically, the planning board's been working with them a lot more than the other side of the office has been.
Yeah, they've been working closely on what the ordinance requires and things like that, but not asking for input on the incentive side until.
Okay. So is there any council objection to scheduling that for the 12th? And I guess I would ask staff, and we can certainly make any of those memos, public on a project page or otherwise as we have them, but anything that can be, put in writing, not only about what they're asking for, but also what's being proposed, and maybe something that shows what was there before and what's changed. So the sooner the council has all that in the public, I think that will help in advance of the 12th.
If we're concerned about the impact of this on the schools, of the Loring project, what about the impact on the schools of the Spring Street project?
Going to have a similar projection
Yes.
in the confirmation.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, the Manx project had a projection. I mean, I'd follow a similar comparable methodology, apples and apples, but I'm trying to think of the sending. Is that Washburn there, or is that's Sherwood Heights? Yeah, I think that section sends to Sherwood Heights, so maybe we want to confirm capacity and just have something from.
And make sure it is.
Yeah. Because we're also looking at two very different TIF structures for.
So to be clear, we were looking to have 2 public hearings on the 12th and 2 votes on the 12th on TIFs and on home funds.
Yeah, there would be 2 public hearings and 4 votes total. There would be a vote for each project on home funds, a vote for each project on a tax increment finance district. So we've got a few weeks to make sure we've got the process down, but at this point, I want to maximize what the public and council has for.
And does the council, the mayor, wish to have another workshop or meeting prior to the 12th?
I don't think we need to.
We don't want to live here.
No, I mean, perhaps, Sue and Dennis can take a look at what the 12th and 19th meetings are looking like. I mean, I don't think there's anything blocked off for the workshop on the 12th yet that needs action. We can look at that. I know we made a commitment to having public input formally that night on the manager search, but we committed to do that when the business meeting started with the notice, as opposed to asking people to come during workshop or staying for other parts of the meeting. So we don't need to come here another night unless people beg us to. What do people say, that nothing good happens when the council's in session, or is that the legislature? I don't.
That applies to the legislature.
Okay. No, I appreciate you bringing that forward and adding that to the plate tonight. So, thank you.